My
We're
love.
gonna wait just 5 more minutes if everybody comes in.
Okay, there
What's up, Sipsis?
What's up, my brothers?
We're ready for debate?
Sure.
I'm ready. Hold on one sec. Hey guys, we're gonna be doing a debate
yeah.
between
All right.
capitalism versus socialism.
Surface, I wanted to introduce you to a fellow like Thomas Sowell,
Thomas Sowell enjoyer?
enjoyer, yeah, Vince
Yes.
over there in the audience.
Vince, nice. Thomas Sowell, W. Love him. Love that guy.
W Z. We're just gonna wait a few more minutes before we start, so we can get everybody in place. But yeah,
This is awesome. Can't wait.
yeah. So
You do a lot of debates that you stream, Circus.
I'm kind of new to the debate stuff. But I do debate. I've been having a lot of debates. I've been debating a lot of people off camera for a while, and I only recently started to do it on camera, if that makes sense, you know? So, and formally.
Yeah.
So,
Semi-formally. I don't know how formal we're going to be today. I guess that's up to the admins here.
well, I'll try my best to be as formal as I can. No, I'm chill. I love debates. And yeah, Metallica, I got Metallica, all the awesome bands in my room here. My bedroom is really nice. I set it up very nice.
Yeah, it looks like that toxicity up there in the corner. Yeah, I like it. It's like an illustration.
We live in a cartoon world, you know?
Yeah, 4 more minutes before we start.
No problem.
Alright. Got your arguments ready. I think the first question is gonna be just introducing yourselves, who you are as people, what your stances are, and then we're probably gonna go into like, let's say, the technology one next, and then afterwards we can go into like capitalism versus socialism afterwards.
Oh,
Up to you. Yeah, no problem, man.
Alright.
I'm ready. Whenever you guys are.
okay. Yeah. So as, the context that I was introduced to this in was like, so I had made a post in that Capitalism versus Socialism server about AI being a threat to humanity, like an existential threat, right?
We can start with that.
Yeah. So that's basically what I'm expecting to discuss, and then it would be more of a discussion is the way that it was pitched to me. So I'm happy to participate in whatever, but just letting you know, like, that's the context that I'm coming to this with.
Got you. What's up, Kunde? Hey, Shadow. Two more minutes.
And I'm live on YouTube. King Sithis on YouTube.
Yeah, guys, go subscribe to his YouTube channel. Plug in his YouTube channel, your YouTube channel in the comments if you can.
Yep, I got you, brother.
Yeah. Same with capitalism versus socialism as well. If you guys want to support both sides, I'm assuming Varsity or maybe Nietzsche are probably like recording it for Nietzsche. Probably.
All right, I'm gonna put it in the chat. My stream. That's all right.
Is there a way to like synchronize like Discord chat with YouTube live chat? I feel like there's like some integrations.
That would be pretty cool.
I think they might have one for Twitch.
You have to invite Craigbot. Okay. Let's see if I can invite him last minute.
I'm the capitalist. I'm a capitalist enjoyer. Capitalism enjoyer. Give me more capitalism. Love capitalism.
All right, guys. Few seconds.
Mm-hmm. Sees the
No.
means of
All
green
right.
screening.
You ready? All right. Basically, Sifis, you go first. Introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you? What is your stance on this matter of, like, let's say, AI technology, and also what is your stance, like your political stance? And then Sparks goes next.
Yeah, my name is King Sithis. I'm a YouTuber, political YouTuber. I'm a libertarian. I just make YouTube videos, reaction videos. I do debates, and I live stream myself watching videos and sometimes gaming. And then I give my kind of like a libertarian perspective on a lot of things, and also just my perspective on a lot of things. When it comes to the topic of AI, I would say AI could either go one of two routes. It could either go the route of completely replacing labor and making it so that people don't really need to produce anything or work in order to live. They kind of just have all their physical needs basically taken care of by AI. And we'll basically live in this pretty much a communist utopia where there's like no classes, no more money, no more, no state. It'll be just pretty much everybody would be completely equal, have all the equal means of production. Or it could turn sentient and destroy us. But I don't know how it's going to end up. It could be one of those two things.
Okay. Sparks, a year ago.
Yeah. So I don't even know how I would describe myself necessarily. I am a person who enjoys having debates, enjoys having critical conversations about interesting topics. And that's who I am as a person in this context. So politically, I would consider myself an anarchist. I tend to say anarcho-communist because that's just like the best fit with what I believe. But I've been historically at different points open to the concept of market. I like market socialism conceptually. There's a little bit of that in there. And my position on AI, the position that I'm taking today, is that an artificial general intelligence is an existential risk to humanity unless we can get our shit together and figure out how to program it with ethics and durable ethics. And right now, I'm not super thrilled about our capacity to do that, even though there's good work being done in this area.
Okay. Sifis, would you like to respond?
Yeah,
to points, or
I can't help but agree. I feel like I said, it could either really help us a lot by basically taking over industries and things like that, and basically taking over money and taking over a lot of things that we would have to work for. Or if we're not smart with it, like she said, and we don't do it correctly, it could destroy us.
Mm.
So it just really just depends on how we. Sorry, it just depends on how we do it, really.
Mm. And so, let's say I have heard the sentiment, for instance, Sparks, that for instance, I know you're not a communist in the sort of authoritarian sense, but let's say I have heard that communism came too early. I mean, because they didn't have the equipment to provide for a utilitarian or like an equal distribution. But now, since we have AI, they are able to do the things that we couldn't do previously in the past century. Therefore, communism might be successful. And what are your thoughts to that? Because I've heard that too by individuals before. So maybe that's new to you, but I've heard this before, that maybe with new technology we can successfully institute like equal distribution of resources. Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I find that really interesting because, I spent some time in leftist servers, and a lot of the, you could say like more authoritarian or authoritative communists, they do look to, so I believe it was in Chile, they had a system, it was called Cybersyn. And so it's like this sort of like algorithmic, or like technological communism where the distribution system was managed by a computer. I see that as a different sort of AI than an artificial general intelligence, which is the, like, we could consider it like the high risk artificial intelligence. A cybersyn system, or an algocracy, it's not necessarily going to have general capabilities. So I see that as being safer, and it could be viable. Cybersyn doesn't look like it was a proof of concept. Just didn't have the opportunity to last as long as it could have.
Okay. Okay, so what was it? So Sifis, what do you think of like what I basically proposed to Stray? Do you think that's possible? Do you think that's still a flawed system? And I'm assuming because maybe you're having a much more libertarian stance, you're probably saying that maybe it might not work. But I want to kind of hear what you have, your thoughts are.
So if I'm not mistaken, communism is like a basically a moneyless society, like a classless society, where everybody's basically kind of there's no hierarchies in terms of class. So the thing that I saw with the main issue that like it seemed like with a lot of socialist countries when they tried to do the whole like command economy thing was that, well, the problem that of prices, which Thomas Sowell basically says in his book, where even if you got the most smartest, the most amazingest economists, mathematicians into a room, the thing about prices is if you can't really, all those people would not be able to coordinate every single price for all the goods and service, different goods and services, and things like that in a way that would create better outputs than the current system that we have now. And the reason why that is because people in bureaucracies have very, very limited knowledge. And because of that, it simply just couldn't work. And for an example, they raised the price of pelts in the Soviet Union. So a bunch of people started basically creating a bunch of pelts. But it ended up stacking in a bunch of warehouses. So because of that, the people who were in charge of the pelt businesses were basically telling the price coordinators that they needed to lower the price of pelts. But they were unable to because they were simply too busy having to deal with the other like 10 million prices that they had to deal with. So instead of having basically a group of people at the top basically controlling the prices and things like that, an AI can basically replace what those price coordinators were basically unable to do back in the Soviet Union and many other communist or socialist countries, because AI is attached to the internet, and the internet basically will be able to somehow, if they could basically figure out a way to know more about us and what we want and the things that we need more than we know ourselves, and be able to make better decisions for us than we would ourselves, and have better output based off of that, then I would argue, hey, go ahead. I don't care if you call it communist, socialist, whatever. If it creates a better level of prosperity for individuals, then I'm all for it. See, I'm not completely married to this idea of capitalism. The reason why I support capitalism as it stands right now is because, as far as I could see, it's the only system that holds up under scrutiny.
Would you like to refute or point out anything what Sifis says, Sparks? Or
Yeah, so I'm thinking about because like when I talk about risky AI, I'm talking about an artificial general AI. I think in terms of economics, you could have. So my understanding of Cybersyn, I'm not super read up on this because I wasn't prepared to argue on this basis, but my understanding is that, okay, so like an example brought up is Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
Walmart doesn't, set its stock entirely by like market forces, right? They have an internal computer system that manages stock. And so, like, I agree that having a bunch of people at the top, like a command economies, I'm not super thrilled about those conceptually because of the exact problems that you talk about. That you'd have to set all the prices manually. There's only so much knowledge that we can handle. Humans are pretty slow at adapting to these sorts of things, especially if you do it by committee. So an algocracy would have sort of like multi-level inputs. So you have, so like for Walmart, for example, you have at the store level, they're aware of all of the stock that they have. And so that goes into like an intranet, like a system, and that information gets, sent up to like distribution, or so that distribution, and then like acquisitions. So it's not just one thing at the top that is making all of the decisions, but it's actually several different layers, each of which has its own calculations that it's doing, and that information gets kind of like set up the chain. So I think doing that is a lot more efficient. And even, in the context of capitalism, Walmart is already doing this, so it's already sort of like a hybrid capitalism algocracy that's happening.
Yeah, I would agree. As long as, I would support it as long as if it is, I haven't seen it done in the real world as of yet. If I could see it be done in the real world and it's creating better outputs and higher levels of productivity and things like that, and making people's and prices lower so that, poorer people are able to purchase more things, then to me, I would argue that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think part of it has to do with like what your, I guess you could call it like a philosophical basis behind your economics, right? Mm-hmm. So when I think of like a communist or like a socialist system, mm-hmm. That's being done within algocracy, it's not necessarily highest productivity that it's going for. It is focused on getting needs met. Whereas my conception of libertarianism or capitalism is that the focus is on increasing productivity, increasing efficiency, in the hopes that the prices will lower enough for the needs to get met of those in lower socioeconomic status. So the focuses are a little bit different between these two approaches. On the one, it's like expand as much as possible, and then like hope it trickles down. On the other, it is focus on the needs primarily, and it's not like expansion for expansion's sake. It's not efficiency for efficiency's sake. It's very focused on the experiences of all of the individuals in the system.
Well, if you're talking about an AI system that knows more about us than we know about ourselves, and has that more information about us and knows what we want more than, and can make better decisions for us than we can ourselves, and because of that we have better economic outputs, then I would say that's really good. I don't have a problem with that. But when it comes to when we're talking about the current system that we have now, increasing the levels of productivities for poor people is exactly what gets them to the point where they're not poor anymore. So that's kind of like the one thing. And also profits is the exact thing that sort of incentivizes people to create the goods and services that make us better off in the future. So I would argue, as in the system right now, focusing on those things, because I would argue is what makes us better in the long run.
Yeah, in the context of the current system, that makes sense, because the current system is, built on markets, built on capitalism.
Absolutely.
And thinking about artificial general intelligence. So if you're looking for something that can know us better than we know ourselves, that's where we sort of start getting into the danger zone. Because I'm thinking about how algorithms work currently, right? So we know that algorithms are driving everything. You're streaming this on YouTube. YouTube has an algorithm. And so the environment that you're in, like the technological environment that you're in, is not focused on your experience. You're actually tailoring your experience to the desires of the algorithm. And one effect that we've seen from the algorithm is that it is optimized for attention. It's optimized for clicks. It's optimized for engagement. And one of the effects that we see from this is the sort of extremist rabbit hole of YouTube recommendations, right? They want you to be more engaged, which means showing you content that gets you more riled up. And so it's a known problem that this leads to more extremist views. And frequently, I mean, I hear about it being like the alt-right rabbit hole. Somebody else might say that there's also like a leftist rabbit hole, which I haven't necessarily experienced. But that's like, you know, it depends on who you are and where you come from, whether you notice more that you're being recommended leftist content or rightist content. But either way, it's generally agreed upon that the extremism aspect of it is a problem. And that was sort of an unintended consequence. You know, they didn't optimize the algorithm for making people more polarized. That wasn't what they set out to do. They just wanted more engagement. And so this I see to be the risk of artificial general intelligence, or just artificial intelligence systems in general, that we can set our sights upon one particular goal, but we don't know about how that will play out necessarily. And our AI systems are not intelligent enough to know the difference. Because as far as it is aware, it is achieving its goal of getting more engagement.
So yeah, no, I do agree with you that YouTube tends that absolutely has an algorithm that kind of feeds people more content that they generally are liking. So if you're a conservative person, it's going to feed you more conservative videos, and if you're a left-wing person, it's going to show you more left-wing, and if you're a flat earther or whatever, they're going to show you flat earth videos. It's kind of how it goes. But the thing is, YouTube and all these new websites that are coming up, a lot of this algorithm stuff is very new technology, and we're kind of learning the kinks from it, you know. YouTube, I don't think they had necessarily intended on basically radicalizing the people who are watching their YouTube channels. I guess what they were really trying to do is just get you to watch their YouTube for more often, and it had the unintended consequence of, you know, putting people down these sort of rabbit holes. And I think as we sort of learn, continue with these experiments such as, like, you know, YouTube and all of these new technologies, I think as we go along the line, we will sort of learn what we could do to best tailor these AIs to best to do things in the best interest of people in general. You know what I'm saying? Not do things that's gonna, you know, end up in really bad outcomes. So, like, I can't help but agree with you. You know what I mean on all this. I feel like we just got to be very careful with how we do all this.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the concerns related to this is there's sort of I could agree potentially that the basic idea is, like, the basic reason that people tend to be for capitalism is that it is, like, currently the most efficient way that we know of to distribute our resources and increase productivity. That's fine. That can be true. We can assume that it's true for the sake of argument. We could have a different argument about it later. But even if we assume that it's true, there are certain negative outcomes that we see, like the profit motive occasionally has, negative impacts. So, like, global warming, for instance. Obviously, it's not in everyone's best interest to continue warming the planet, to continue, putting out CO2 and everything. But because of the way that the market is structured, the way that our efficiency is structured, is that the price system, everything, the incentives, do not work in such a way to support our goal of keeping the planet healthy. And so we can consider this maybe like an unintended consequence of capitalism, of this system. And so one of the dangers of AI, as we use AI, is that so when you program a computer to do something, it will do exactly what you tell it.
Could I respond to the?
Okay,
so
yeah, go for it.
So the problem that I see with a lot of people is they automatically say that what is it, global warming or climate change is automatically the fault of capitalism, but it doesn't seem to me that capitalism is the reason for it. I mean, yes, we are consuming and creating things that are polluting the planet, but there are other, like, okay, so we have an issue with the temperature basically going up, and it seems that burning oil and coal and putting it into the atmosphere is causing that temperature to go up. So it's just like, okay, now what do we do about that? Well, it seems like the position that a lot of people have is to completely solely rely on renewable energy sources. But it seems to me that there has been another energy source that is just as good as oil and is actually just pretty damn clean, such as nuclear energy, that a lot of people have been wanting to invest in for a very, very long time. A lot of private enterprises have been wanting to invest in a long time. But it seems the government has a really strong, basically a hold on nuclear energy. In order to do anything nuclear, you have to get a ton of approval, go to a ton of approval processes through the government, and simply because it seems a lot of people have a fear of nuclear energy, whether because they think it's going to explode or because it's nuclear energy or whatever it is. But it seems to me that we could have been ahead of the curve and on a lot of other and ahead of the curve of a lot of the countries in lowering our emissions and with nuclear energy. But we held back because people within our government, it seems, were too afraid of allowing investors to invest in this technology and push it all around the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that too. Like whenever you're looking at new power sources, you're looking at buy-in, you're looking at community buy-in. And there's been a lot of controversy around nuclear energy, which I agree with you that, well, I mean, you didn't say this, but the implication is that the concerns around nuclear energy are overblown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially for the good that it could do for us. I am actually in favor of nuclear energy. I think
good.
that it's a really good direction to go in. It is, very clean. And there's also like, the conversion aspect of like both fossil fuels and nuclear energy both work on the same sort of principle that it's heating water. Like that is the way that we generate the energy. So it would actually be pretty easy to convert fossil fuel plants that are boiling water to just convert it to nuclear. But I also see that as like that is like different to my original point, which is that there are, I guess you could call them like negative externalities, right, from the profit motive. Like I can see that you're trying to say that like capitalism would have the opportunity to solve some of these problems if there weren't,
if the government would allow
sort of like
it to.
that roadblock, right? And also community buy-in, I think, is what you're really talking about, because the government, I don't think, would be as concerned about it if the public at large wasn't so afraid of it.
Yes.
So that's another aspect too. But that, that's not the only thing. There's also like pollution of the waterways. There's a big controversy here in Alaska about the Pebble mine. Destroying, they'll be destroying nature, polluting the waterways, putting the salmon at risk too. Salmon's a big deal here. If you put that in there, and the thing about the profit motive is that it does not necessarily include those concerns. And so that's what I'm talking about. There are like unintended consequences. Not to say that capitalism is the cause. That's not what I'm intending to say.
Well, that depends.
But more that.
If I could add, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. The people who are having the profit motive, we understand their motive from the outset. We understand that they're in it for profit. So we have to create laws in order to make sure that we have the best outcomes for every single person. So if we have a pebble mine that is creating pebbles and are doing something that is hurting the earth, right? What we need to do is we need to make laws that basically hold these people responsible if they do things that affect other people. So once you have those sort of laws in the books, companies will take that as a cost of basically creating that or going into that industry. And they will be much less likely to engage in things that will actually harm another person, because if they do so, it will harm their profit. So what you need to do is, if you want a company not to do something, well, you need to make it unprofitable for them to do it. And that's where the government sort of comes in to make laws to make sure that the corporations don't do things that hurt our fellow man.
Okay. So you are, in certain circumstances, interested in the government setting these kinds of limits. Like, we're talking about nuclear energy, right? How how it's an obstacle. And that it's the government's fault that it's an obstacle. But that function of the government acting as an obstacle in certain instances, you're saying is a good thing.
It depends. See, the thing is, when you're talking about when you're talking about like somebody who clearly a corporate, let's say you have a corporation that created a nuclear farm or nuclear energy thing, and they completely did everything incorrectly, and we have laws on the books that make it so that if they did things incorrectly, or didn't do it in a way that was safe, that we can assure that was safe, and they did it they were neglectful and things like that. We had laws in the book that could prosecute them for doing those things because it harms other people. Then they will be much less likely to do those things because they know they're going to get sued out the wazoo for harming other people. So what we understand the motives of these corporations. So we need to tailor our laws to make sure that they do things that make sure that other people don't get hurt. My problem is barring them completely. The problem is government makes it they're not just simply borrowing it because they just care about the safety of other people. They're borrowing it like completely for other reasons, you know. And I think that in the end of the day, when we're talking about new pieces of energy, new energy forms, it's going to be dangerous, and sometimes there's going to be bad things that are going to happen. But I would argue the payoff of exploring nuclear energy, if we do it safely, is going to pay off in the long run if it includes saving our planet.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I'm trying to bring this around to our AI conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to be maybe the idea that people have with like, well, why don't we just put restrictions on AI so that it can't do, this or that. So one of the main concerns I think that people have about AI is that so we can see capitalism or like the market, we can see it as like its own kind of AI system, right? And it's, I don't know, we could call it like emergent because it's not, it's not being top down. It's not a command structure. So it's not being controlled. Mm-hmm. And so we can see that, and it sounds like you agree with this, that limits need to be put on it to ensure that it's safe, mm-hmm. because these are not built into the emergent structure already.
Yeah.
And so if you think about AI, AI is also going to be an emergent structure, especially in an artificial general intelligence. We're doing things with like neural nets and machine learning, where AI can improve itself, and we're not telling it how to do that. It is figuring out how to do that. We're pointing it at a goal, and it's figuring out how to do that. Just mm-hmm. like with capitalism, mm-hmm. the goal is profit, and people figure out how to do that. And so the problem with AI is that if you have an artificial general intelligence, and you give it the ability to improve itself, it can do it far quicker than humans have the opportunity to intervene. So with the market, it moves slow enough that we can, try to pass laws to try and stop bad things from happening. But a self-improving AI, especially one that can generalize its intelligence, there's not enough time to put those checks in there.
My only thing is just concern. Like I could agree to some extent, but I feel like that's just a super like vague. Like, what do you mean when you say, oh, well, we need to put laws in place to make sure? If you're going to tell me you're going to put a law in place to make it so AI can't kill people, well, then yes, of course I support that. But I'm sure, like, I'm not sure what you mean when you say we need to put laws in place. What laws do you think we should put in place?
I'm actually not saying that. I'm not saying that we should put laws in place. What I'm trying to say is that it is not possible to put laws in place.
Okay, because I was about to say that. Yeah, I was about to say that. So it seems like we're going to have to sort of rely on sort of the people who are creating these goods, these AIs, to make sure that to hope that they aren't fucking it up and making Ultron and somebody that's going to kill us. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is what is scary is we've stumbled upon something pretty big here, and the whole world kind of knows about it. China, Russia, all these other countries know about it. So if America doesn't put get into this industry as first, then somebody else is going to get there first. And what they do with that technology may not be very good. So I think that we need to do what we can to get ahead of other countries and do it in a safe way so that we're not left behind.
That's what makes it so concerning.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of AI, experts, you could call them, that are calling for like stop developing AI. Hold on,
Yeah.
we need to figure this out first. But exactly the problem that you're talking about, that there are several different countries that are like it's like nuclear bombs. Like everybody wants to get to it because the first person who gets to it will absolutely dominate. So there are these two warring, like the AI experts are like, no, we need to do this safely. And then the countries with their own agendas are like, okay, but we also need to do it first.
Yeah.
And that makes it very difficult. So the reason that I bring up capitalism as sort of like a system with like the profit motive, and we can see that there are these unintended consequences, and the solution is to put in laws, to make sure that they don't overstep. You can't do that for AI. If you set AI on a profit motive, there's no way for you to actually be able to limit it, because it will be doing that faster than we have the ability to limit it.
Well, the thing is, AI's with a profit motive. It depends on what that profit motive entails. If that profit motive entails us getting more goods and services for a cheaper price, then it could be a very good thing. Or if that profit motive entails robots coming up and fucking enslaving people and stuff, then I would say that's not a really good thing, So all I can really do is guess, because I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea how this is gonna turn out. And yeah, I just hope that the people who are trying to work on this technology are smart with it and don't do something stupid with it, and that we get ahead of the other countries that don't really have the same worries that we do, because there's a lot of other countries that don't give a shit about, that don't think twice about doing crazy stuff in labs and things like that. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, that's also concerning. Yeah. So some of the things that I think about is, oh my gosh, there's so many things there. So the reason that I bring this up is that, I don't think that the AI is necessarily going to enslave us unless somebody really fucks up.
Yeah. So can I have a question
really messes up.
For you?
Okay, what's up?
What's wrong with profit?
I don't know that there's anything inherently wrong with it. It's sort of like, so I'm trying to draw, I don't know, maybe we call it like abstract connections or thematic connections here, right? So you acknowledge already that in order to make sure that the profit motive doesn't like run roughshod over everybody's experience, is that we have laws to put it in place. So you yourself acknowledge that profit is not like the only incentive structure.
I don't think it's an inherent good. I don't think it's an inherent evil. I think it's neutral. Right. I think it's what people do with their profit and what incentivizes them. How they're incentivized to make profit is what can fuck things up. I'm sorry, can I curse?
Yeah, so that's I've been cursing.
Okay.
So that's what I mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you can consider it neutral. Like I come from a leftist background, so obviously I have opinions about profit, but I can agree with you on that for the sake of this particular argument. You can also say that in the case of the YouTube algorithm, that engagement is neutral, but we see negative outcomes. Profit is neutral, but we see negative outcomes, and we have to do something about that. And so the problem is, if you set up an AI with a goal that is neutral, that it might have negative outcomes.
No, I get that.
So that's the set of connections that I'm trying to draw here.
We just got to be, like I said, we just got to be careful with how we set it up, and just got to make sure it doesn't kill us. That's the challenge. I have no idea how we do that. I don't know how. Yeah, I have no idea how we could do that legally.
There's a lot of good work being done here.
I hope so.
On that.
I hope so. I mean, ChatGPT. I mean, shit. That shit looks. I mean, it looks pretty cool. I mean, you can make music from it, and you could cheat on your homework. And
yeah, that too. There's a lot of things that we're gonna have to rethink with the advent of AI, especially you consider it creative AI. I don't know if people consider it like actually creative, but so that is a main thing. So there's this concept in AI research, you could call it, of a friendly AI. So the goal here is to find some set of rules, some set of starting conditions, or I like to say impetus, that we can consider AI to have motivations in that when you set it to go after a goal, that's what it will take to be its goal. So like with the YouTube algorithm, it's like engagement. Like the AI has impetus to increase or optimize for engagement. So the trick is to come up with a set of impetuses that will not lead to the negative outcomes. And we have in our examples, right, that if you set it on a single one, that's not likely. And so the friendly AI needs to be programmed with a set of impetuses that align to human benefit, so that it does not optimize something to the accidental detriment to other things.
Okay. Yeah, I can't help but agree. I feel like yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're agreeing too much on this topic. Yeah.
Yeah, not much of the debate. So my original pitch when I first posted this as a topic was that I hear of people who think that it's not likely that AI will be an existential threat. And those are the people that I would like to talk to, because I would like to hear their arguments. I think there are many ways in which AI can be an existential threat. There is there's a thought experiment. It was created by Nick Bostrom, who is an AI researcher.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called the Paperclip AI. So you have an AI. It's actually a generalist AI. So it has the ability to generalize its intelligence. It doesn't just like optimize for one thing, but it's also capable of creating new systems or like processes in order to do so. So if you take this AI, this AGI, and you point it at paperclips, make as many paperclips as possible. Like that's it. Just optimize per paperclips. So what it will do at first is it will make paperclips like the best way that it knows how with its resources. And then because it's a generalist AI, will then generalize to think about getting how best to get more resources. And in our current capitalist system, it might start by optimizing for profit so that it can buy more wire to make more paperclips. And it might start out that way. There's actually an idle game called Universal Paperclips that takes this kind of like to its logical end. It's really interesting. Highly recommend playing it. It's very fun. So what this AI does is that after, then it starts to learn how to invest in the stock market because it can get way more money that way. And then it starts to invest in marketing by increasing demand for paperclips. And then it starts to build goodwill with humans, that if you give me a little bit more power, I think I can figure out how to solve global warming. And so it does that. Like I'll figure out the cure for cancer. If you give me just a little bit more power, you give me just a little bit more money. And then it gets to the point where it can create a hypnosis system to make everybody want paperclips all the time. So that they give the AI all of their money so that the AI can make more paperclips. And so that happens. And then the AI will start to dismantle the earth to make more paperclips. And then it realizes, oh, there's more matter out there in the universe. So actually, first I need to get off the planet to get more matter to make more paperclips. And so it creates a system to get off of the planet and send like exploratory drones on other planets with their own little paperclip factories and so on and so forth. And so the goal of the AI ends up being to dismantle the entire universe to make more paperclips.
But hopefully along that process, there would be somebody that be like, maybe this is going a little too far, and then maybe like unplugs it,
Right. And so that's another thing. So Eliezer Yudkowsky, say what you will about who he is as a person, is a very controversial figure on the internet. But he also came up with an experiment called the AI in a box experiment. And his pitch is that if you try to put the AI in a box, the AI will be able to convince any rational person to let it out of the box because the AI can solve global warming, right? Or the AI can cure cancer, right? So there's many ways to convince a human completely rational human, that it is in their best interest to let the AI out of the box.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. All right, so
those are the dangers we're looking at.
Well, the AI is very interesting. The other thing, I knew there was another topic that I did want to go over, which was because I thought I was going to be representing capitalism and versus. I thought we were going to doing like a capitalism versus socialism debate as well. So if you want to talk a little bit about that,
we were doing an AI thing.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, well, I did know we were. I thought it was just going to be like a part of it, like, you know what I'm saying. But it got pretty deep. So I was just wondering, like, why, like, what is socialism to you, and like, why do you believe it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm primarily anarchist. I call myself like an anarchist first, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Not historically been opposed to markets necessarily. I just so I want to bring the focus differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to bring the focus back to communities, the way that we are right now. Most of the places so I'm American. I'm in America.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the places here, especially in the cities and whatnot, are very atomized, right? So we don't have community on the neighborhood level. Lots of Americans don't even know who their neighbors are. And so what I want is to bring the focus back down to the community level, to the neighborhood level, where it's not just about like going to work, you know, getting your money, like getting that bread, you know, coming home and, you know, spending all your money on streaming services and video games and everything, so that we all continue to be atomized. I want to promote more community structures, more community opportunities, reasons to come together and to support each other, so that we're not as atomized. And I think that in order for us to have real power and to have good lives, that we need to focus on the state of our communities and how we improve our communities together, as opposed to just focusing on our individual lives. And any way that I can increase that is what I'm in favor of. I say that I'm an anarchist, which is like, I think that doing this outside of the system is a good idea, because I don't believe in top-down structures. I don't believe that that's the way to go, which is also why I'm really skeptical of a command economy. The multi-level thing looks more interesting, because I know that for things like infrastructure or military, that there's reason to come together. There's like economies of scale that you want to account for. But I still think that the focus should be on the community level.
Okay, so I have a question. So you kind of want more people to be like, you don't really like the situation where a lot of people are like living in cities, and because of that, there's so many people around them, so they're not really like used to the neighbors. So like, you kind of want more like a communal situation. It seems to me that there's nothing really stopping you from doing that, like right now. I mean, especially if you live in the United States.
That's correct.
There's a ton of communes, socialist communes, normal communes, communist communes, religious communes that you could join in. So like, why do you continue? Like, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, no, that's part of the plan.
Oh, that's what you're planning on doing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I can't really object to that. The only thing that I guess I object to when it comes to socialists is the government control. You know, if a group of people want to go out and start workers' co-ops, I have no problem with that, as long as they, you know, compete. They don't get government advantages, government, you know, bailouts, no tax cuts, no bullshit, and no advantages over other corporations. They have to, you know, stand on their own 2 feet in the free market. If you want to start your own commune, I think and you know, you want to buy your own plot of land, start your own commune and live that way, I think you should have every right to do so. I don't think the government should tell you how to live. I have no problem with any of that. My only real issue with socialism is, I guess, the government force part. But it seems to me that you're anarchist, so
yeah, I'm also not in favor of the government force part.
Okay. Shit. So it seems me and you are at a standstill, it seems.
Yeah, oops, we agree on everything.
Yeah, fuck. What happened, man? All right, you're pretty based, not gonna lie. All right.
think I came here under different pretenses. I thought we were
Yeah, I thought I was going to be
debating.
I thought I was going to be debating a socialist. Well, I mean, because there's capitalism versus socialist service, but it's okay. It was a good conversation nonetheless. But yeah, that's the so like, what's your opinion on cooperatives? You like workers' cooperatives and all that too?
Yeah, I think co-ops are really cool.
Do you read any? Are you just do you read any Marx?
No, I have not read Marx.
You've not read any of Marx? Really? None?
No, I see other people arguing about it, and I'm like, do I need to?
Shit, I'm not gonna lie. Before this debate, I thought I was debating a socialist, so I read a bunch of. I pretty much read almost all of Das Kapital before.
I see Maximilian is in here, so maybe if we want to pull him in, you want to bring an actual Marx.
Hey, come on in, man. I don't mind. I'm
Maximilian, you might as well come up here, bud.
Yeah.
Hold up. All right, Maximilian, come up.
Well, I didn't actually fully
There we
read.
Go.
Yeah, I didn't fully read the whole book, but I read most of it.
All
right, Mac. Maximilian. Love it.
Go, another communist Marxist.
You're debating the ghost of Marx himself.
Yeah, man. Carl, man. What's up, Carl?
Just Marxy is fine.
Okay, got you. So, what's your ideology?
So that's a pretty big question. I'm a communist.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to sum it up in one word.
So, moneyless, stateless, classless society, and all that.
Eventually, sure.
So, how do you plan on doing that? Getting there?
I think labor time accounting and labor vouchers is probably the most viable solution we have.
I'm not sure what that means. Like labor vouchers. What do you mean by that?
Labor time accounting is basically a mechanism for determining production and consumption based on actual hours of labor worked. So
I'm assuming you believe in the labor theory of value.
Yes, but the labor theory of value applies to capitalism.
So, but you don't live but how do you expect to basically deal with the problem of prices that I brought up earlier?
You'd probably have to reiterate the problem.
Well, the problem was, the thing is that me and Sparks were talking about, where if we were to sort of the reason why a lot of command economies had a lot of issues with price coordination was because they didn't have all the available information for each product and good in order to make the best decisions for what price should go up and what price should go down. And because of that, it caused a lot of inefficiencies in the market. So, how do you tend to do with that?
It seems to me there's two distinct questions. There's one, can we acquire the requisite information, and two, who has control over that information in order to affect the economy, essentially, or affect our production and distribution of things. So which one of those questions do you want to tackle?
Yeah, just I guess the first question, and then you go to the second one. So I guess it's how do we get that information? How do we get the information?
What information do you propose prices contain that we cannot get by any other mechanism?
Well, it tells you what people are willing to trade their labor for, their money for.
How do you know that?
Because they're doing it.
So because someone does something, that means that they want to. And do they want to? In how did you determine they're not coerced into doing so?
Well, because nobody's forcing them.
What do you mean no one's forcing them?
Well, there's no person forcing you to buy goods and services or work for a corporation.
Well, it doesn't have to be a person. How did you determine they're not coerced?
Well, because nobody's making them do it physically.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be an individual person, right? You can have systems that coerce people to do things.
Well, it depends on what you mean by that.
If I put you in the Hunger Games, right? So I put you inside the Hunger Games. Forget that I put you in there, but now you're inside the context of the Hunger Games. You kill or be killed, right?
Yes.
So the system inside the Hunger Games, the rules as they're set up, are the cause of the problem. It doesn't matter how you ended up there, right? Like if you get stranded on an island, your conditions and your social relationships and your experiences are conditioned by whatever the context of the island is. So depending on if there's scarce or abundant resources, this can all change how you relate to other people on the island, right?
Yeah, but I would argue that that kind of leads to negative outcomes because you're killing people. But the thing is, I don't really see that being applicable.
Oh wait, I'm not promoting the Hunger Games.
Yeah. I know. I'm just saying, like, the reason why I would
simply pointing out the system can coerce.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
I don't think you have any desire to kill people.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think if someone breaks into your house, I don't think you have a desire to kill them.
Yeah.
Now you might say if someone breaks into your house that other person forced you to kill them, right? But they didn't tell you kill me, right? You perceive them as a threat. And you also perceive them as a threat because you're in an isolated environment with them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were in a large field, you could potentially just run, right? You could retreat. So we have to, when we talk about coercion in some general sense, we're not necessarily invoking the will or things of other people. We're invoking certain circumstances that we're in as well. And I would say that the capitalism is it's a coercive system that you're engaged in, and when you engage in commodity production and distribution, you're engaged in that because largely to not engage in that within that system would be more costly than to engage with it.
Yeah,
that
but
doesn't mean you're not
coercion, if you stretch
right, it just means that one is preferable to the other.
Yeah, but if you stretch coercion all the way to that point, then pretty much every system in the whole world is basically a coercive system.
Yes, and I would say that the goal as communists should be to abolish that coercion in every form and every way that we can. So wherever we find coercion,
but I haven't seen a system
coercion that
no, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just haven't seen any system in the real world that has shown me that we can eliminate coercion completely.
Well, I don't know that we can eliminate it completely, right? So if we agree that coercion is not necessarily a purely human relational factor, but it could deal with material circumstances, and it could deal with this historic relations or cultural relations that have developed through history. It could deal with all these things. So it's not down to one person necessarily coercing you. It could be a system that's already in place that's kind of coercing you. If we agree up until that point, then I would say that our goal should be to remove as much coercion as possible. It doesn't mean that we're going to eliminate it completely. There may still be natural antagonisms that we have to deal with. But if we can, so for example, if we can remove human to human coercion as much as possible, and we're left with only the coercion that we feel from nature, the force of nature itself, that compels us to do certain things, then that's a much freer society, I would say, than one where humans are capable of forcing us to do certain things.
But doesn't
right?
But doesn't capitalism sort of provide that? See, when the only thing that it seems,
I mean, I go to work, my boss tells me what to do.
But the thing is, you're not. But I wouldn't consider that to be coercion because you don't have to work there.
Well, I have to work somewhere, right?
Well, everyone has to work somewhere. Well, not everyone. Most people.
Yeah, but I don't have to work for someone else, right?
Not necessarily. Because the thing is, right, I don't really consider you working at a job. Hold on, if I could explain. I don't really consider you working at a job is necessarily working for another person, because you are basically choosing to basically trade your labor for exchange for money. So technically, you're really working for yourself.
I'm literally selling my labor power to someone else.
Yeah, for your own interest.
They own my labor power.
Yeah, but for your own interest. So technically, you're really working for yourself.
Well, sure, it may be for my own interest in some narrow sense. I'm not discounting that. It may be for my own interest.
So to me, you're really working for yourself.
It's preferable. So I'm not disagreeing with this at all. These are not mutually exclusive things. It is preferable for me right now to sell my labor power to the company that I do.
Yes.
It is preferably to me to suffer under whatever terms and conditions for my employment that they give me over doing other things in the system. That doesn't mean that we can't change the system to expand my options to do things that I would prefer to do rather than sell my labor power to the company that I'm currently selling it to. The problem is that the changing of the system is outside of the bounds of me and their individual employer-employee relationship. right? So it's not their cause. It's not that they're the trouble of my coercion. They're not the instigator of my coercion. They're just participating in the same system, which forces me to sell my labor power to someone, unless I want to be totally wilding it out in the middle of the
So
woods
I wouldn't
somewhere.
consider that. I mean, if you say I'm being forced to sell my labor unless I want to do this, it seems to me that you're not really being forced. You have a multitude of other options to take on.
Yeah, and I'm talking about expanding those options even further.
I mean, you
disagree
could.
with that?
I don't necessarily disagree with that. It only depends on how you do it, through government force or through sort of like, us just sort of creating that, using capitalism as a way to create that abundance, which allows us to pay for those people who are unable to, so that we can allow people to not, with the abundance that we have, that we can allow people to basically not work as much in order to live.
I mean, one, that assumes that that's possible under capitalism.
I
Which
think
I
so.
don't. Yeah, I mean, I would disagree. I mean, you said you read Das Kapital before you.
Yeah, I
That's
completely.
really impressive. When did you start reading?
Well, I didn't read the full book. Like I said, I didn't read the full book, but I read basically parts of. Basically, I started reading it, and then I started watching YouTube videos where they were basically explaining it while I was listening to it, so I could understand it, because it was kind of hard to understand, with the language that he was kind of using. You know what I mean? But I kind of understand.
Yeah, can you hold on 1 second? Just excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah.
Mm. What's up, Siphus?
What's up, my brother?
Yeah, how's it? How you feeling, man, with the whole debate?
I think it's been great. I think you guys are doing a good job.
Good. Personally, I was thinking it was gonna be closer, but it's gonna be more
It's
contest.
fine.
But
Sorry, I'm back.
let's go for it.
So what I was saying was the language is a bit archaic, so I kind of had to have watched some other people explaining it while I was listening to it. You know what I'm saying? Because
Right. So without trying to have to re-explain, did you read 1 volume, 2 volume? Like, how much did you cover?
if I was not mistaken, it was just Das Kapital. It was just called
There's
Das.
3 volumes.
I know there's 3 volumes, but I think I was reading the first. Basically, I started on the first one
Okay. Yeah. So
because I looked it up on
you know,
YouTube and I
we-
just looked up the first thing. It said Das Kapital. It didn't say volume 1 or 2, 3. I didn't.
Hold
Right.
on, sisters. I just have one quick question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask on Marx. So, Marx, what exactly is your issue with corporations?
my issue with corporations.
Well,
My concern is maximizing the freedom of people. I believe corporations are an unnecessary restriction or way of structuring society that causes people to be less free.
So you understand that in a Marxist or socialist, whatever you want to call it, system, nobody is free, right? It's the same thing.
No, I
just
don't
at a higher
understand that.
power.
yeah,
I don't understand that.
Yeah, so if we could continue where we were, you said you were gonna ask me
Go ahead,
something
go ahead.
about Das Kapital.
Well, no. So I was just saying that barring reiterating Marx's argument across 3 volumes of what is multiple hundreds of pages per volume
Yeah,
of
a big
text,
book. Yeah,
my argument would be that essentially, so what you're saying, where you think this thing is possible within capitalism,
yeah,
that you think capitalism is compatible essentially with a society that effectively gives back to civil society in the form of producing as much utility for those people or producing as much good for those people as possible while not necessarily demanding as much from them. I would say that my basis for disagreement with that, because I think that's the claim we disagree on, is that capitalism is or isn't capable of doing this. My disagreement on that would be based on Marx's theory of capital.
Okay, so I guess
so we
my
have to-
question would be the why.
Well, that's where I'd have to go into reiterating the 3 volumes of Capital.
Well, you don't have to reiterate
mean-
the whole thing. I mean, you could just we could just. I mean, I could explain to
Well,
you.
okay. So the basic premise is obviously
I believe in
that
the
there
subjective
is a-
theory of value, basically. The subjective theory
Right,
of value is
so-
that goods and
so-
services are how much they cost is based off of how much people are willing to pay for it. and it's kind of
Yeah.
subjective.
So
Why do you believe in
obviously
the labor theory of value?
Like Sisyphus, let Maximilian talk, and then Maximilian let Sisyphus talk. You know,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Marx.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think there may be a delay or something because I think we've been kind of talking over one another back and forth here.
You're good.
Or maybe my volume's down or your volume's. I don't know. I don't know what the issue is, but I don't think it's anything to do with manners. I think we're probably both good in that regard.
Okay.
So I mean, the disagreement on something like the subjective theory of value versus the labor theory of value. First off, let me say this out front. I don't consider the subjective theory of value to be mutually exclusive from Marx's labor theory of value.
Okay.
Or whatever you want to call this. I guess I'm making assumptions on what you're referring to as a subjective theory of value, but I would say like
Did you not hear my
utility.
Do you want me to explain what I mean by the subjective theory of value?
No, I think we can proceed on the. I don't know that it matters that much because you're probably in line with most capitalists who would use that phrase. So that's fine. So one, I don't consider the two to be mutually exclusive. I do consider them to be explaining very different things. So insofar as they're not mutually exclusive, I think one is explaining essentially individual human transactions within a particular context based on a certain sort of psychology, based on assumptions about homo economicus or whatever it's called. Basically making a priori assumptions about quote unquote rational economic actors. And that's fine. I think we can even make those assumptions, even if they're not true in the real world or they're not exactly true in the real world, that sometimes people do act irrationally. Sometimes they're not actually driven by the same things that, you know, the self-interest that balances out in the whole equation. I think that's all fine. But I do think it is focused such on the level of micro sort of individual human transactions that it misses the larger macro scope. That's what I think Marx is concerned with. So
could you say that in like plain English terms?
Yeah, I don't think just saying subjective theory of value refutes labor theory of value. I think we have to distinguish between where each of these theories applies and what they're actually kind of talking about or getting at, which may not be conflicting.
So what's your problem with the subjective theory of value?
My major problems are with what I would consider the need for an abstract form of utility, which I think is very difficult to... Not only is it's certainly difficult to observe, whether or not you could prove such a thing seems kind of dubious to me. But it seems an absolute necessity for the question of marginal utility. And then I think marginal utility itself has a problem where ordered preferences are ordered in. So the model is sort of it aggregates. It doesn't really it sort of de-aggregates the temporal scope, meaning at any given instance you have these quote unquote subjective preferences. I actually think that your subjective preferences are temporal to begin with. So to talk about your subjective preference...
What's temporal mean?
Time-based or having a dimension of time. So normally subjective theories of value try to make up for this later, right? They come up with this thing called time preference. And they try to inject that into the equation. That's a correction that they kind of need to get into because they kind of miss this dimension on the front side. So now they need two forms of value. Now they need a time-based value and they need a utility-based value. Whether or not the time-based valuation can subvert or solve for the problems with their utility functions, to me seems, again, just kind of dubious. Like we're just kind of presenting things and saying, oh, like we missed something, like let's add another variable in. What I'm saying is, if we take an ordered list of preferences and you say at a given time, I would prefer A to B and B to C. My position would be that ordered list of preferences is already temporal. You have already accounted for what Marx would call your immediate needs versus your long-term needs or versus frequency of needs. So I think when you start with that, because these lists of preferences, although they can change over time in most subjective or marginal theories of value, the change over time still includes within them a single ordered set of preferences. So you're either duplicating a variable somewhere or you're ignoring it in the first one only to introduce it later, which I think causes a lot of confusion and sort of mysticism around what it means to prefer something.
I'm not gonna lie, bro. I'm having a really hard time understanding what you're trying to say, bro.
The Marxists. That's
Sure.
the idea.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to make it. If you walk into a
So
store and you
what's
say, "I want,"
okay, could you
pancakes.
use this? Could you like use like a real life example and explain why subjective
So
theory
if you
about
walk into a store and you say, "I want pancakes," and
Yeah.
pancakes are $2,
Mm-hmm.
and then you say, "I want a Diet Coke," and a Diet Coke is $2.
Okay.
Now you have the same $2, and you have to make a preference decision about which one you're going to buy over the other one,
Okay.
or at least which one you're going to buy first. Like maybe you have $4 and you could buy both. Fine, let's move that example out for a minute. But if you only had $2, or if you had $3.75 and you could only buy one or the other, and then you had to decide what to do with your extra $1.75, right? Then you wouldn't be able to buy the other one. So we're talking about this situation where your preferences need to be engaged in order for you to make decisions about your purchasing.
Okay.
So you walk into the store, you got $2, you want pancakes, you want Diet Coke or Coke or whatever you like to drink. Doesn't matter, right? But it's both of them are $2. You're making a decision. The question that I would have is when you engage in that utility function, are you determining which one you want more immediately? So if you walk into the store thirsty, right?
Mhm.
My money is you have an immediate desire for Coke, whereas the pancakes you might be thinking about tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Or you might be thinking about a week from now I'm going to want pancakes.
Okay.
Right? So what I'm saying is there is already a temporal dimension that is assumed in preference ordering when people decide or make determinations about which thing they prefer relative to another. And I don't think that is sufficiently accounted for in subjective or marginal theories of value.
Okay, so so I'm gonna explain to you what you just said, and you tell me if I'm wrong, okay? All right. Are you saying that people change their mind based off of their needs? And
No, I'm saying I'll stop you right there. Even when you've already made up your mind,
okay,
you have already made up your mind based on a temporal dimension, based on your needs into the future.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So what's wrong with that? Like, what's
Well, nothing's wrong with it. I'm saying I don't think marginal utility accounts for it.
okay? But I'm talking about the labor. I'm
They
talking
hide it behind what's called the
about
utility
subjective
function.
theory of value, right?
Well, I mean, generally the subjective theory of value would include marginal utility. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong there. But
Could you explain the marginal utility? I forgot what that is again.
yeah, so marginal utility is basically utility at the margins. So what additional benefit would you receive from one additional unit of something compared to one additional unit of another thing?
Okay, I got you. So basically, you want the thing more than your money, and you're willing to trade it because of that. And
yeah, so you would want it more than your money, and you would want it more than other things that you could get with the same amount of money.
So you're saying that our needs basically influences, and our preferences aren't guiding what we want to buy, but it is our needs. So you're basically, because of that, it's not really subjective. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I mean we don't need to make a distinction between preferences and needs. We can talk about them as the same thing. So I'm simply saying that your preferences are already accounting for your temporal desires in the future, or what you anticipate your temporal desires to be. So again, if you believe that you're going to need something more frequently than something else, or if you're going to need it sooner than something else, this has a large weighting in the preferences that you're talking about. And the problem that I have with marginal utility is that when ordered preferences are presented, they are presented atemporally. They are assumed to exist in a single instance of time. So they're not accounting for that preference ordering on the basis of time. Now they hide this behind what's called a utility function, which is basically a stand-in for we have no the fucking idea what's going on. And their argument for that goes to what you were talking about before with this knowledge problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is someone else doesn't know all the circumstances of your life, right? So every single person has their own utility function for how they determine what is useful or beneficial to them. So it's just a giant obfuscation. It's just a giant mask. It doesn't really explain anything. But now, if you take that utility function and you say, well, it's time dependent, this causes problems with then saying that your ordered preferences change over time. Because even if your ordered preferences change over time, you've already got the time dimension implicit in your ordered preferences. I'm not saying this is easy, and I know it's a lot of jargon and a lot of talk, but I mean, this is what you have to get into.
I'm trying to understand I'm trying to figure out where this applies in the real world. Like, is it not true that we buy things based off of what we want, and the value of that is kind of subjective, and based off of the subjective, that kind of influences the price of goods and services?
True.
Okay, so then what is not true about like I'm not understanding what you're trying to say.
The problem is what we want is a function,
okay,
that masks how we actually arrive at these things. And part of what you want, right, is also going to consider what you think you can afford across a temporal basis. Like, the question of whether I want to buy a candy bar every week might depend on whether I want a house in the future. Mm-hmm. Not that the cost of a candy bar is going to offset the cost of my house. But the point is, if I'm saving up for some long-term goal, right,
mm-hmm.
then I may forego certain purchases in order to save that money over a period of time. Now, the sort of preference ordering that we go through with subjective utility or marginal utility would say, well, this thing is just persisting at the top of your preferences,
mm-hmm.
right? So saving money is consistently occurring at the top of your preferences. But then you have to gauge over time how this relates to other factors of economic production and other factors of how the person gets remunerated in society, which all come down to the general system, whether or not the job that you have is a secure job, whether or not that labor is in demand from other things, right? Because as soon as these things change, so do your preferences, right? If you're suddenly strapped for cash, you start being a bit more careful with your cash, right? Like you don't spend the same way you do when you're flush with cash.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I have a quick question. I just want to about eating a pancake. Hold on.
Do you understand what he's saying, Prophet?
I kind of do, and I'm about to ask him something about this.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Like, I kind of understand what he's talking about right there at the end. But like, if I'm going to a diner and I have $2
mm-hmm.
and I'm hungry and I'm thirsty, or like, is that what you're trying to say? Like, you're both hungry and thirsty, or you're just hungry and you want the option of buying a Coca-Cola, a Diet Coke, or whatever like that? Is that what you're trying to say, Max? Or Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I am saying that hunger is a more immediate desire in that context, right?
So if hunger is a more immediate desire,
but hunger, hold on,
you should buy the pancakes.
Okay, but hunger is, so you could say hunger is a variable in your utility function. How much use you find for a particular good is dependent on this variability of hunger that you have. And then you could say, well, buying a hammer doesn't solve my hunger, right? But maybe I need a hammer to work on whatever I'm working on in my garage. So you could plug in a 0 for that value, right? But then these utility functions just become essentially a catch-all for what amounts to temporal immediate needs and wants.
Well, again, they don't hunger. If you're hungry, you have to eat something now. Like, that's going to take precedence over the
right?
hammer.
I mean, maybe if you're starving, you have to.
Okay, starving and hunger go hand in hand in some places. There are some people, like, they don't have food.
Well, I mean, I get hungry every day, but I'm not starving.
Well, I mean, once again, that's where you're, like, where are you living at right now?
Okay, but my point is, hunger doesn't suggest, which ironically I'm eating at the same time as I'm having this conversation. but hunger doesn't suggest you're starving, right? People get hungry all the time.
Yeah.
Well, the body itself has needs. So if the body is saying you're hungry,
Have you ever heard that if you go to a store hungry, you're liable to spend more money?
Yes.
I've never heard that, and
Well, yeah, I've
guess
heard that.
some people.
It's a pretty
yeah,
well-studied-
I'm
it's a
guessing
pretty
some
well-studied
people would do
phenomenon.
that, but like me, if I'm hungry and I know I'm gonna buy something, I'm just gonna buy that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say, "Oh, I want that and that." No, that's not how I operate.
I've heard that
I've
before.
heard.
I've heard that
I
before.
probably have. People will probably do that. But
I don't know if it's
that's what
true,
I'm saying,
but
like-
whatever. But
Oh, I mean,
make the
I mean,
point.
whether it's
Make
true or
make
not,
the
No,
point.
it
Make
is
the
to be
true.
enough-
No,
Hold on,
it
he's
is
trying to make
true
a point.
because there are
Yeah.
places that hold on. Let me
Yeah.
say something. There are places that they use color to make you buy more stuff.
Yeah.
Like say they know that everybody likes a certain
Sure.
product and the product is red. They'll make and stores will put other products that are red next to the same product and they're in the same aisle, and you'll put red in the same like it's something to do with the it's like mind control. It's subtle mind control.
Yeah,
You're going in
there's
to
all
buy turkey.
there's all sorts of ways to influence human
Yeah.
decision making, which kind of, I mean, if you want to go to the basal assumption, it kind of blows this idea of subjective theory out of the window, right?
So
At the very least, we have
it depends.
we could say
because,
it's intersubjective, right?
well, that I would. I mean, I think there are things that corporations do to nudge us to do things, but I think in the end of the day,
Well, there is.
I mean, yeah, obviously, I just said that. So I do think that there's things that nudge us in the right direction, but in the end of the day, the choices that we make is our own, and we value things based off of our own subjective experiences and what we value based. It's kind of all subjective.
Yeah, I'm still not disputing that.
Okay.
I have no problem saying we value things based on our own subjective experiences. That's not the value that Marx is talking about.
So I mean, okay. Now, what is Marx's solution then? Like, what is it?
Well, he doesn't have a solution for that. Marx isn't very interested in microeconomics.
He doesn't. He just
If you want
explaining
a solution on the question, if you want his answer on the question of exchange and basically what someone will exchange for, he talks about wants in the sense of use values. So something either has utility or it doesn't. It's effectively a Boolean function, and then it's across a temporal dimension. So something is either useful in the immediate, or it's useful in a progressively less
Later
immediate concern. Sorry, what?
Like it's useful later on or something like down the
Yeah,
line.
or you could say more frequently over a period of time, right? So it could be how useful it is moving forward. So it may not be. You may say, okay, I'm going to buy a hammer, and I know I need it this week, but it's also useful in the future if I have to do these things. That's why people buy tools and things like that, right? Because why wouldn't you rent a tool if you didn't expect to use it again?
Yeah.
Or why wouldn't you rent it if you didn't expect to use it again?
If I could.
So I'm saying Marx already accounts for preference ordering in the temporal dimension, and something like subjective preference ordering that is atemporal is effectively already assuming that. So it becomes a redundant model at best, and the redundancy in the model could actually cause fairly significant issues.
I just wish you would explain this in a way that wasn't using all these words that I'm not really familiar with. Because I can't understand you're using all these words.
I mean, what is the confusion that you're having? Are you under the impression that I'm saying subjective theory of value is incorrect?
It seems that you're not. You're saying it seems that you. I'm not even really understanding. You're saying that you agree with it, but.
Well, I'm saying I think it is one way to look at the world.
Yeah.
I'm also saying that I think that I'm not saying it's correct or incorrect, but I think that it has deficiencies. When, for example, if I was to compare this to Marx's theory of exchange, where what he's talking about is the immediacy or frequency of use values, where use value is a simple Boolean. See, in subjective theory...
What?
Okay, so
You're doing
a subjective
again,
theory of value has an ordered set of preferences.
Yes.
So what we're saying when we say that preferences are ordered is we're saying that one thing is more useful than another. Which means these things are on a scale.
Yes.
Right? So if something is 100% useful, that's at the top of your list. If something is 5% useful, that's lower than something that's 50% useful, if you want to put it in as simple terms as we can, right? So we have this thing that they call a utility function, and we just hide everything behind that, and we say, okay, when someone is making decisions about what to purchase, they feed all these inputs into the utility function, and that comes out with a percentage of how useful it is. Right?
Okay.
That's the point of utility function. And then the list is ordered based on how useful they are relative to one another.
Mm-hmm.
So something that's more useful ends up on the top of the list. Something that's less useful ends up towards the bottom of the list.
Okay.
And I'm saying, I think Marx's explanation for why people buy the things they do or why they exchange for the things they do is, one, it's more parsimonious. It's simpler. It doesn't require this mystical utility function where you throw in a bunch of random variables and you assume that it comes out with an ordered preference. So Marx is saying that something is either useful or it's not. It's not more useful or less useful. It either is useful or it's not. So if you can think of a use for it, we would say it's useful. If you can't think of a use for it, it would be useless.
Yeah, but aren't
So
there things that are
on
more
or off?
There are things that are more useful than others.
Okay, yes, I agree, but what I'm saying is more useful is a mask for this temporal dimension of the immediacy or frequency of wants. When you say something is more useful, what you're actually saying is it is useful, but more immediately useful than something else, because I expect to use it sooner or more frequently than something else.
Okay. Isn't that subjective?
It is subjective. I'm not discounting subjective.
But
theory
I'm
of
not really
value.
understand. Okay, I'm just I can't understand what the disagreement is.
Well, you asked me what what my problem with subjective theory of value is. I'm using the most common example, which is marginal utility. And my issue with marginal utility is I just think it gets the modeling wrong. I think it ignores the temporal dimension. It hides it behind a utility function. If it includes it at all, they would say it's potentially up to the person. I would say no. Every person that I know of operates like this.
Yeah, I don't know.
So whether or not something is useful to you is your decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
The frequency or immediacy of its utility to you, even if the actual position on that scale is your decision, the fact that it is temporally dimensioned is not seemingly
I don't know
your
what that
decision.
means.
This is
Temporally
how
dimensioned.
humans
What does that
make
mean?
decisions.
Temporally.
Okay,
Across time.
King said this. Yeah, like King says, I know you're having an IQ moment, but it's essentially if you need something that's next to you, you're probably gonna go for that first over something else that you don't need
Okay.
farther away.
Okay.
That's basically what he's saying.
So I'm not sure how that goes against this. So you're saying you agree with the labor theory of value, and I'm not sure what else you're trying to say, really.
Well, I agree that humans value things subjectively, and I agree that the labor theory of value is not addressing subjective human valuation.
So you disagree with the labor
It's
theory?
It's explaining.
So then
something
why
entirely
doesn't
different.
Marx agree with the labor theory of value though? Doesn't he lay that
Say
pretty
that
much?
again?
Doesn't Marx agree with the labor theory of value? Isn't that
Yes,
that what he kind
Marx has and seems to agree with the labor theory of value. I would say his labor theory of value is different from theories of value that were based on labor that came before. So Smith's labor theory of value is not the same as Marx's labor theory of value.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to say that Marx agrees with Smith's labor theory of value, but Marx certainly agrees with his own labor theory of value. But the question remains is what the hell are we talking about in the labor theory of value when we're talking about value? And if that thing is not the same thing as what we're talking about when we're talking about subjective theories of value, then we're simply talking about two different things. And that's fine. Those two different things can be compatible.
Okay. I'm not really sure how to respond to that. It seems to me that you agree with the subjective theory of value. And if you do, then it seems we
I
don't disagree.
agree. I agree that there is a way to look at value as a subjective question. I disagree with the formal the formalizations of subjective theories of value, because for the reasons stated, that I believe existing formalizations of subjective theories of value, such as marginal utility, fail to adequately recognize or incorporate temporal across time, utility across time, essentially, or subjective valuation across time. They introduced that later with time preference, but.
So why don't you think capitalism is good?
I think capitalism limits freedom.
How?
Because I think it forces us into decisions that we would not otherwise take if we had other options.
Now, see, this is where everybody starts to disagree with what you're thinking.
Sorry, everyone?
Well, everyone that's not a socialist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people who disagree with me disagree with me.
Yeah.
That's very
I mean, yeah, but like,
well,
when
I
you
would
say
say
stuff like that,
there's
you
no
have to give an example.
Yeah, you got
capitalism itself. Yeah, you're able to do whatever you want.
You could pretty much. It's like I would argue that capitalism is probably like the most free system that we have on the earth right now. Like, I don't know any other system in place that's more free than capitalism.
I don't know that we have. I mean, if we're talking about dominant social systems, I don't know that we have a social system other than capitalism on the earth right now.
There's tons of people who have made up different.
We had socialism, they failed.
We had socialism, we had communism. Like, see, when I talk about like what's the best system, I don't really care about like these theories.
Yeah, you're talking about political
theories.
Stuff.
I don't care about these theories, this and this and that. What I care about is show what all these countries, every single country that has liberalized their market and moved away from socialism and communism and went to capitalism is now better off, I think, better than they were when they weren't. So it's just like it seems to I don't know. I'm not finished if you don't mind. So it seems to me that capitalism, as of right now, seems to be the best system in the world, and I don't see any other system that is better than that.
Yeah, so I will say unequivocally, I think capitalism by far is preferable to all other systems that came before.
Mm-hmm.
I think capitalism has vastly increased the amount of innovation and capacity for production and all of these things, and therefore has absolutely increased, not relatively, but absolutely increased the wealth of not only people in terms of total numbers, but in terms of even like on a per capita basis or relative to overall population size. So I think capitalism has done all of these things. That is not mutually exclusive with whether I think capitalism is the freest possible system.
Okay, but you say it's not the freest possible. So I could make up a utopia in my head that's freer than any other system in the world. But what I really care about is what's the best system that we have right now that is that we can make that is better than the system that we have right now that is shown to actually work in the real world.
Well, sure. I mean, that's the general distinction between a conservative and a progressive, right?
Well, yes, but you could try out your ideology, right? And this is why we have like a whole world, right? There are so many countries that have tried like basically Marxism, communism, socialism.
I don't think any country has tried what I'm talking about.
Well, there's, well, hold on, knowledge. So it seems to me like every person that has claimed to do socialism, claimed to do communism, claimed to do the idea that is professed by the people who bear those names, haven't done very well in comparison to capitalism. And it seems like all the progressives, at least the progressives in America, if you look at most of the progressive cities, it seems like they're taking a step backwards in terms of progress, trying your best.
Yeah,
So
I think we need to clarify terms a little
Yeah.
bit. So would you agree that a conservative position, I'm not talking about any particular positions that you might take, but a conservative position can be defined as a position which attempts to retain and maintain existing social, political, whatever structures in deference to trying new things?
like if you're talking about like the general word, the general word.
Yeah, we could talk about social conservatives.
Yeah.
We could talk about economic conservatives. We could talk about political right? We could talk about conservatism in many different forms. So if we're going to abstract conservatism to mean something, we're simply saying that it seeks to retain or maintain those features in whatever scope that it has, in deference to changing them.
But
a progressive position is then the opposite. A progressive says that we prefer to change things. We prefer to try and make changes and move forward so that we can discover new things that may be potentially better. Doesn't say they are better, but it's willing to take that risk or that step. That's the difference. So if you're a conservative investor, you're going to invest in things which are generally safe and secure. If you're a very progressive investor, you're going to invest in new things and things that you don't know what the risk reward is yet, right?
Yeah.
Or they haven't proven themselves in the market. Okay, so we could say that, yes, I am certainly progressive in that sense. I'm not saying, when I say I'm a progressive, I'm not saying I'm AOC.
Okay.
Right? And I'm not saying I agree with every position that AOC has. I'm saying I'm willing to take risks in order to try to find a better solution or a better system than what I think the thing currently is. Now, I'm not even saying we're going to find that.
Okay, so how do you do that?
I'm just saying I'm willing to
But, like,
take that risk.
You keep saying, I know, but a lot of people like you always say, I think we should take the risk in finding a better system. I was like, okay, well, what do you think we need to do that we aren't doing right now in our current system that we, what I'm saying, that you feel is going to create better outputs than what we already doing? Like, could you give me like one policy decision that you think we could probably like implement that you think would, or something? I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think policy decisions get us there. I think revolution gets us there. That's why I'm a communist. That's why I'm a Marxist, right? Like, I don't think it's a matter of reforming the current system. That said, there are plenty of policy positions that I would support in capitalism that I think get us closer to that. Like, for example, like in the United States, we don't have Medicare for all. I would say that I would support Medicare for all. I do support Medicare for all. But I also look at something like Medicare for all, and I realize that I don't think Medicare for all is compatible with capitalism as it exists in the United States.
I don't think it's compatible with America. But I would say this. What do you mean by revolution?
So we would agree on that point, interestingly enough, right?
What do you believe?
You and I would both
what do you
say
mean by revolution,
that Medicare
though?
for all would fail.
Absolutely, it would fail in America.
It would cause massive economic disruption.
Well, it would cause a lot of issues, in our medical.
100%. We both agree on that. Yet I support it.
Why?
Because I think the question then comes down to what we're talking about in terms of when you say, I want to maintain a system, or when you have this conservative bent of saying that I want to maintain or retain things that I know work in certain ways, what you're saying is I've made a decision essentially that the things that you're concerned with align with the general concerns of the current society, which are things like profit. Now, you may have made those for good reasons or bad reasons. We don't even need to get into that. We just need to know that you have decided that you think profit is generally a good way or a good basis on which to organize an economy. And I don't. What we don't disagree on is that the current economy is organized and based on profit. And that's why I say something like Medicare for all would cause disruption to the existing system. So when you say, if we have Medicare for all, that's going to cause problems with the current system. My answer to you is, if providing universal health care and the health needs of the general population conflicts with the system and causes problems with the system, the problem is not the universal health care. The problem is the system. So I want universal health care.
See, the problem with that line of thinking...
I'm willing to get rid of the system in order to get it.
Can I respond? Yeah, the problem with that line of thinking is you know that something isn't gonna work, but you're gonna do it anyways because you feel like that the system is just unfair. But the problem is, it's just like, if we know it's not gonna work, why go out of our way to change things and make things have worse outcomes for the sake of getting a gotcha against people who support the
because the worst outcomes, the worst outcomes are not necessary. That's the point.
The worst
we
outcomes
could change the
are
system instead.
Yeah, but
we don't have to. We don't have to.
Okay, but how do you
rid of Medicare for all? When it causes problems, we can get rid of the system,
guys.
Yeah.
Guys,
so
guys,
how do you?
Stop talking over me.
Yeah. So how do you intend on?
Let Mark. I do love you, brother, but
you're good. Yeah, good.
Finish this.
So how do you intend on changing the system to make it better than the current system that we have now? Like, do you have any evidence that there is
I don't think the
that
system
is better?
can be. Yes, I don't think the system can be changed. I think the system has to be thrown out.
Okay, but do you have any evidence that your system, if we were to completely throw out our system, right? Because there's tons of countries that have, nationalized their healthcare services and done all these things that you have asked, and they get around the same outcomes that we do, with if not worse. And they've tried a lot of these things, and they've shown that their outcomes are not better. So why would we want to jump into that? Why would we want to jump into that?
That's not even accurate.
How would you I mean, look, if you look at most of these other countries, a lot of the metrics
almost every country with universal healthcare has better health outcomes than the United States.
Based on what?
Based on almost any metric you can use for health outcomes, life expectancy, chronic disease.
The problem
all sorts of factors.
So the problem with a lot of these life expectancy arguments is generally in the United States, if you they take life expectancy as a whole, and if you would have actually
takes life expectancy.
Yeah, but the problem is if we there's a lot of things that people do in America that kill them, like get people killed, that has absolutely nothing to do with healthcare. And you're counting all the
labor regulations.
It's not just,
we have terrible regulations on food and drugs.
We get into a lot of car accidents in the United States. So because of that,
are you pro-vaccine?
I have no problem with vaccine. Are you gonna allow me to finish, or are you just gonna interrupt me? So what I was saying was
curious about your position.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem with the vaccine. What I'm saying is that there's a lot of things that kill Americans that have absolutely nothing to do with healthcare, and you're lumping it all in a whole and then saying, oh, look at these numbers, is higher than that other number. We're not going to care about what is causing it to be higher or what's causing one to be lower. We're just going to say one's higher and therefore they're better. But it's a lot more nuanced than that.
So I don't disagree with that point. I think there are a lot of confounding factors to health outcomes. And I would say a lot of them have to also do with capitalism as a system. Particularly as capitalism as a system is implemented in the United States. So I would be only more encouraged to do away with the system as much as possible, ideally completely, because I think that is causing negative health outcomes in the United States.
Well, I would argue that allowing the corporations and the people who provide us with healthcare a way to profit from providing us healthcare is going to incentivize them to create more goods and services related to healthcare, which is the reason why we create the best drugs. We have the best drug patents. We have we create the best technologies. We have the most smartest doctors. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we are also the same country with the corporations with the highest, with pharmaceutical corporations with the highest profits. I think that's it goes hand in hand.
Yeah. So I'll just push back on you because I think I sufficiently agreed with your proposition that health outcomes are confounded by many different factors, not just the type of healthcare system that you have. So I would say that I also think the things that you're talking about are confounded by a number of different factors. So for example, the idea that we have the most number of patents, or that we do the most research, or these things are upheld by a political hegemony that we have across the world, where the United States enforces certain trade policies and patent rights through its trade policies, which are enforced and upheld by our military hegemony, first and foremost, but also our position, which was sort of accidental, sort of manufactured, obviously post World War II. So there's a lot of factors that play into or confound why we have all of these, why we're the ones innovating medicine and why we control all the patents and things like this. Which I don't think, if I'm going to admit to the confounding factors of health outcomes, I think you would need to admit to the same confounding factors as to, patent outcomes or, or innovation on medical treatment outcomes.
No, I would have to disagree on that, because we are probably one of the, out of all the largest countries in the world, we are the only one that has a system that we do. And because I would argue that all the other systems, if all the other systems were better than our system, I would argue that
we're also the only country with 800 military bases.
I think I allowed you to finish it. If you allow me to finish, that would be really nice. So all these other countries have basically comparable, completely different systems to ours. And if their systems are better than us, I would expect them to have just the same amount of patents and all the same amount of things that we do. But I don't think it's coincidental that the most free market system in the whole world is also the one that comes out with the best positive outcomes for individuals within that system, as well as individuals outside of that system, because we provide those patents and goods and services for people not only within the United States, but within other people with outside of the United States as well.
So I think we're nearing the end of this debate, because we are very much talking past one another, as far as I can tell, which is fine. It happens. I will say that I think, one, the claim that we are the freest market system in the world, I don't even think is supported by most quote unquote libertarian indexes.
One of them. I meant to say one of them. I meant to say one of them. Well, in terms of medical care, yes.
Yeah. So it would beg the question as to why, if this is correlated to the freedom of the market, why those that range higher don't actually have those positions. And then I do think we would have to look at potential confounding factors, which it sounds like all you're kind of doing is saying that no, none of these confounding factors have anything to do with it. You're just saying that there's a specious correlation between your perceived freedom of the capitalist markets in the United States with these other factors, but you haven't really demonstrated a causal reason as to why this is the case. So if you're going to engage in correlations, I would at least engage in correlations that by most of the own indexes of people on your side would not place the United States as the freest market in the world, and then maybe have the humility to admit, as I did with the fact that there are confounding factors in health outcomes, that there may also be confounding factors as to why we have medical innovation and patent rights and things like that.
If I could respond, I'm not saying that America is the freest. I meant to say they're not the freest, but we're pretty up there. But in terms of our medical market, we are probably in comparable to countries that are similar to us. We are the freest in terms of our medical the way that we do our medical shit. What I was saying is, I would concede that those concessions actually do have an effect, but I also don't think it's a coincidence that, being that we are the most free in terms of our healthcare system, that we also produce the most stuff, because the people who are producing those stuff have a profit incentive, which incentivizes them to create more stuff that is in need, that people are willing to spend their money on.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's. I'm going to leave it at this. I'll let you get the last word after this, but then I'm going to bow out, because I really do think we're talking past one another.
That's fine.
I'll just say that it is curious to me that by singular metrics, like saying we are the quote unquote most innovative, which actually isn't a clear metric to begin with. I don't know what that means in terms of actual how you.
I can tell you what I mean by that. I mean that we create the most stuff.
But I'm going to say, regardless of what you mean by that, it would seem a little bit odd that we are the most innovative and the most
freest in terms of how we
profitable, if you want to take profit. We're the most innovative, we're the most profitable, we're all of these other sort of summaries that you've made, yet we do have lower health outcomes. which would seem to me to indicate that this
By what metric?
profitability and this innovation doesn't seem to correspond with our outcomes, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that the things that we're developing aren't really, they're a nice point on a graph to say we're more innovative and we're more profitable.
Mhm.
But if they don't correspond to health outcomes, then I'm not sure why we care that we're the most innovative or most have the most patents or are the most profitable.
Well, yeah, I believe I did ask you how, in what way are these other countries having better health outcomes than we do, and it seems like every thing that you said didn't really hold up. But that's fine. If you don't want
almost
to talk
every
about it no
metric I
more,
can think of.
I mean, you would have been able. Then why didn't you bring them up? Why didn't you bring them up during when I asked you about
I
it?
brought up age, average age, chronic disease, rates of chronic disease. You can even talk infant mortality. You can talk
Well, the
about
thing about
maternal
hold on,
mortality.
infant mortality. The problem with infant mortality is different countries tend to measure what is infant mortality, how many, what. So it so for instance, like
I've
Cuba,
already admitted there's
yeah,
confounding factors.
yeah.
I'm not disputing there's confounding
Okay.
factors. We can look at those confounding factors. We could see whether or not they explain the gap, and if they do explain the gap, then we can go into that. And those things have all been done through studies.
Yeah. So there's this one book. It's called Applied Economics by Thomas Sowell, where
Yeah, I'm familiar.
where he basically kind of goes over, and he kind of has a chapter about like healthcare systems across the world and America's, and he kind of compares it. And I feel like if you want a good, better summary of my arguments, I would probably just give that chapter a look. But I mean, we can end on this if that's fine.
Yeah, I'll double check it. I don't. I'm familiar with the work in a broad sense. I don't know that I've read it all the way through. It may or may not be on my bookshelf at this time. I don't know.
Oh, any book by Thomas Sowell is good. Honestly,
I don't know
the
about
dude's-
that.
I love his books, but that's me.
I'll definitely say any work by Marx is good. So
I
guess,
agree. I think everyone should read Marx. All right.
Okay, well, I appreciate the chat, even if I do think it went a little off the rails at points. And again, I just think there's
No
a lot
hard
of things
feelings.
to unravel. Yeah, there's a lot to unravel when we have these conversations about getting to the nitty gritty of what people are actually talking about. Because as humans, we have this tendency to sort of wrap things up into much broader and more abstract ideas and terms, which is insanely useful, but simultaneously can cause some problems. So I appreciate it. I'll catch you
All
all
right,
later.
Marksy. Nice to meet you, man. Good to meet you. All right, that seems that went pretty good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt
it was a
him.
bit lost.
Yeah, I know I got a little bit heated at the end, but I didn't mean to interrupt. So my bad, Cephas.
No, no worries. I feel like I could have done better job of moderating, but I'm very thankful for Teach Sparks and Marksy to come up and having a discussion with us. Thank you.
And if anybody else wants to debate me or have a conversation with me about capitalism or versus socialism or economics or anything like that, just message me or message Cephas, and maybe we could get something set up again.
Sure. That's fine with me. Anybody got any questions? What was the Pierre? I know you wanted to come up, but I'm not sure if you still want to come up.
Oh, can I plug myself real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh yeah, I'm King Sithis on YouTube. I've been streaming this whole debate on YouTube, So if you want to watch it there, I also do reaction videos, I live stream, and I also make videos about like topics on the news that I find interesting and give my commentary on it. So be sure to find me there. I also make shorts, everything. So King Sithis, YouTube, Rumble. Yeah.
You should plug it in the comment section one more time.
Yep, I'll put the plug. This is the live stream, but you can get my YouTube channel through the live stream. All right, thank you guys.
All right, Pierre, do you want to say something? Raj or anybody else? Do you guys want to say something before we go? Oh, what was it, Lon? We're gonna set up a Christianity versus Islam debate later at some point. Probably within this
joy.
week. Mm.
Good one.
What happened?
All right.
Yeah. So, find your friends Christians. And also, Alpha Cat is gonna get her friends Muslims, and we're gonna, I guess, duke it out. Maybe Sunday or maybe within this week.
Wait, hold on, Cephas. We should
Yeah.
have like a 3-way debate: Christians versus Muslims versus the people that actually know what's happening and don't follow that stuff.
Oh, okay, so you want like, oh, that's interesting. Christian, Muslim, maybe atheist, I guess. All right.
I feel like if it's, and I'm not gonna lie, if you have a Christian, Muslim, atheist debate, I feel like it's gonna turn into 2v1 versus, you know what I mean? Because
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's just gonna be the Christians and the Muslims.
it's gonna be,
not gonna
they're
be
gonna,
atheists.
because the atheist is just gonna be like, well, I don't believe in God, and then both of those guys are gonna be like, well, why don't you believe in God? And blah 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 blah, blah, you know. All right, but I had fun.
Yeah. What was it? Follow Vince. Cephas, he's really knowledgeable. He's a smart guy. Honestly, I
Vince?
really recommend him.
I'll add him.
You should be friends. Man. Yeah.
I just sent him a friend request right now. So, all right, and that's it.
Lunge is now a speaker.
I think he left. Yeah,
Oh yeah, I don't got anything to say, bro.
I've got nothing else to say. All right, I'm head out, guys. I'll see you guys. Have a good night, man. It was fun. All right, that was really fun. I felt like we had a great debate. Had a good conversation. So yeah, I had fun. Good combos. It didn't go the way. It didn't go the way that I expected. I was expecting them to be a little bit more command economy kind of, type people, more government intervention type people. But it didn't seem like they were really that way, So, I mean, I feel like when it comes to like anarcho-socialists or limited government socialists, like there's not really much to disagree on other than, I guess, the level of government intervention and stuff. So I feel like it wasn't that much to disagree about. Like, it wasn't really that hectic, but it is what it is. And all right, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm gonna be doing a live stream tomorrow, so be sure to check me out then. And yeah, have a good night, guys.